Hey, what's going on? Welcome to the Doug Show. My name's Doug Cunnington, and in this episode, we get an update from Christy. We, of course, have been following along for, I think, like 3 years or so. This year, we're working on the Growth Trifecta Case Study. We're getting an update for May 2022. And Christy, how's it going today?
Hey, it's going pretty well. How's it going with you?
Pretty good. I actually just brewed a batch of beer, and we're recording at like 10 in the morning. So I woke up early and got everything going. But yeah, it was a good brew day. I still have to clean up after we finish, though.
I remember that was one of the first things we talked about when we met years ago in Bozeman, because you were all about it.
Yeah, and I used to brew like all the time, and I would brew a ton back in Atlanta, maybe every 2 weeks or so, or every week if I was really ambitious. And I was able to do these sort of smaller batches on the apartment electric stove just because it was only like 5 gallons. And I would brew during the workday, which was pretty fun. I'd have my laptop set up and I'd kind of run back and forth.
So you couldn't do that at the office?
Yeah, no, you couldn't do that at the office. And now it's, really nice weather, especially in the morning. So I was like, I just got to get back into it. The worst thing is if you run out of beer, basically.
That's right. Enough said.
So I was chatting with, I was interviewed not too long ago, and someone took a look at my blog and they saw the Growth Trifecta Case Study, and they thought, well, they didn't do very good research. They said, oh, you have this concept, the Growth Trifecta. And I was like, actually, that's just a case study. I don't even know what the three things are. I don't even remember because I didn't name it. So
Yeah.
what are the three things in the trifecta here?
Sure. So the first part is new content, right? So adding new SEO driven content. The second part is improving existing content. So trying to get more dollars out of every blog post I already have. And then the third part is selling my own products. So diversifying out of affiliate and ad sales and going to things like courses, guides, and other things like that.
Got it. Okay, perfect. That makes sense.
You're welcome to take credit for the trifecta if you want to.
I mean, it's actually directly from some of the stuff that I teach anyway. So you just named it trifecta. So
I like naming it.
It's a smart thing to do. So looking at the graph, which you wrote a blog post, so we're going to link up to that so people can get a little bit more detail here. January and February of 2022 took a little bit of a hit. We kind of went backwards a little bit. And I think part of that was due to the December Google algorithm update. Traffic was down a little bit. And then, of course, we've had generally affiliate revenue is down a little bit, especially I think on the Amazon side. However, this past month in May, it looks like you're kind of running even from the last 3 months, about $5,700, $5,800 or so from March, April, May. So can you talk about the earnings this past month, sort of the trajectory in the past quarter, basically?
Sure. So like you said, January, February were lagging behind what I thought they would be. So those two were under $5,000, and that had been the first time I've been under five in a while. So that made me a little bit worried, but then it did tick back up to about 5,700 consistently for the last 3 months. So it has stayed pretty steady. The split between ads and Amazon is usually like almost exactly 50-50, historically speaking. So like all of last year, that's pretty much how it was. This year, Amazon's definitely been down. So ads have been higher. For example, in May, Amazon was 2,500 and ads were 2,800. So almost all of the loss that I'm seeing over last year is on the Amazon side.
Okay. Gotcha. And is there anything specific that you could put your finger on? I think in the past we've talked about looking at certain posts that were ranking better in the past that were driven by affiliate revenue. Anything stand out to you now?
I really can't see anything that's a clear indicator of why it would be happening. I just see generally every single day lower income from Amazon. So like I don't know if people are purchasing less, period. If they're going for one thing and then they're actually just getting that one thing instead of getting 50 things like they used to. So it's just hard to tell. But in general, the Amazon stuff is just really lagging.
Okay. You did cross over a threshold for lifetime earnings, which is arbitrary, but it's a nice round number. So what
Yep.
lifetime earnings did you cross over to?
Yep. So it crossed over 150,000 for the little baby site that I started with like 4 posts. So that's
so
cool.
Crazy. Yeah, it adds up over time.
Yeah.
What about traffic? How's it looking? Is it growing? I know there's perhaps a seasonal component occasionally for this niche.
Yeah, occasionally. It was up a little bit from last month. So last month was 105,000 and this month was 107.
Okay. And when you look at both traffic and earnings from last year in May, where are we at?
Yep. So earnings last year were 6,600. So a little under 1,000 off last year for earnings. And then traffic is a little bit iffy because we had a traffic fiasco last year at this time. You can read all about that on the updates. It was dire. But anyway, it ended up being fine. Just a reporting error. So I'm guessing it's around 109 is what we tracked last year, but it was probably higher. So It's probably down off of last year.
Got it. Okay.
But trending up for this year. So that's good.
Perfect. And finally, expenses. I know last month in April, expenses were kind of high.
Bonkers.
You were paying for stuff for work that's going to happen in the future. So that's just a thing you have to do. So where were we at this month?
Yep. It was a little bit more reasonable this month, 5,190 for expenses. And of that, 1,200 was to have someone clean up my second course content so that I could actually get it out there. So that was also a one-time expense. There was about $2,200, I think, in new content spending. So for writers, and that was expected.
Got it. So 12 hours for content cleanup. So it's $100 an hour for content cleanup and organization. So is this a pretty high level person?
Yeah. So this is someone that I actually got introduced to from the big apparel brand that I'm writing for that I met through the site.
Okay.
So this was one of their old writers. And so I felt like, I just literally handed it off. I was like, please make this not trash.
Okay.
Like write it so that it makes sense. Like make transitions, clean it up. And then I literally didn't look at it again. I just sent it to my team and was like, put it in Teachable.
Well, let's jump ahead and talk about the course then. So why was the course in such rough shape and why did it need such a treatment?
Yep. So my grand plan back in the day, which I think we started this like more than a year and a half ago, was to trade with an expert on the topic to do the content because she had asked me to do some other marketing things for her. And I was like, oh, this will be great. She knows all about it. This is the topic I want to do. And then it ended up just being like, you're dealing with someone who also has a busy life and this isn't a priority and they're not a writer for a living and. So lesson learned, not worth it.
And sometimes that stuff can work out, but most of the time I want to pay for a service or pay, even if it's, maybe a casual thing. And I'll tell a quick story. So I now know how to live stream and I have video equipment and stuff like that. And I've done a lot of these. So I know how to do a live stream for YouTube and I haven't done it where I feel like I'm an actual expert where I can go in and like tell someone exactly how to live stream.
Sure.
But recently there was a choral orchestra concert. They needed to live stream and they got a quote. It's like $1,200, far beyond their budget. It's a nonprofit. So I was, I guess, on someone's list, and they were like, check with Doug. So I was like, I maybe can do it. I was like, I'm not the right person. I have the equipment, but I'm not the right person. I don't do this kind of stuff. You should find someone else. But basically they were like, well, either we're not going to do it at all, or it's out of our budget. So basically I could have done it for free, but it does take time. So I was like, I'll meet your budget a little bit less than that. But the point is they paid me, so I took it seriously versus like just bartering, where if they just gave me free tickets for a while, I'm like, they're just giving me, extra tickets. It's not. So anyway, paying and making it a professional transaction changes how the interaction is. Any thoughts?
It's true. Yeah. I think for me, where I get a little stuck is that I sometimes need experts, and those people are not writers, or they don't do videos. Right. And so it's a little bit like, well, I don't know how else to do it. Like, I can't go on Upwork and find an expert in this topic who makes great videos. It's not a thing. So yeah, but it was a real pain.
Okay. So 12 hours, $1,200, somebody fixed it up. What's going on with the course right now?
So it's now all in Teachable. So that's good. Side note, we also got our Teachable subscription downgraded, which is very good. So we were paying $120 a month, which was just making me insane. And now we're back to $30, which is fine. So that's good. But yeah, so it's sitting in Teachable. I have 2 videos to add and then throw in some imagery, and I'm waiting on a draft of the sale page from my team, and then we should be done.
Okay. What's your target for launching?
Last year? Technically. Yeah, I mean, I want this thing off my list, so June would be great.
All right, the next 3 weeks.
I think it's realistic.
Okay. All right. So part of this is coaching, and I will preface this. I think, Christy, you already know the point that I'm going to make here, but it could be the first time that people are hearing about this. And I'm prefacing and saying it's coaching because at some point someone said, Doug, you're being so hard on this person. Why are you such an asshole? And I'm like, well, that's what I'm supposed to do because I'm not.
We're still friends. You can be an asshole. It's all right.
I'm illustrating certain choices that you can make, and then you made your own choices.
Do you want me to guess?
Yeah, go ahead. What do you got?
Okay. I feel like you're going to say I should have pre-sold the course to see if people would buy it. I should not have bartered for any of the content, and I should not make it so perfect so it would have been done last year. Am I close?
Yeah.
Is it the Doug trifecta?
It's mainly the first part. So we'll go through this in a painstaking way, but quickly. How much have you spent on the course, not even including Teachable fees, but how much for content and like this $1,200 and then the other stuff? I want to say it's like $3,000 to $4,000.
Probably.
Okay. $3,000 to $4,000. You actually have sold a handful of them. And I think you've made, if I had to guess, like $2,000 to $2,500.
For courses over time. Yeah. It's around 2.
So you're still in the hole $1,000 to $2,000, which I think if you do a regular launch, you can get that back in the next year. I think that is not out of the question, especially with 2 courses.
Agreed.
You'll get better with launching and so on. However, the better way to do a course or many digital products is to pre-sell it. It's generally what Teachable, Kajabi, Thinkific, it's generally how they teach it so that you don't invest all this time and money for something that you're not sure if someone wants. So I won't go into super detail, but basically you create an outline, you create the sales page, you'll let the people know, I will work on this. It'll be drip fed out over the course of 6 weeks or whatever the right amount is. And the point is you set a threshold. I want to sell 10 of these. If I sell 10, I'll develop the course. If I don't meet my goal, then I won't do it. And part of what we've talked about before is you're like, I'm not sure if I'm a digital course person, because this is like pushing a boulder uphill, like nothing has gone right along the way. And maybe you're not. Like
Mhm.
it's a great profit margin, and it helps your audience out, and you have a lot of insight on what the audience needs and what they want to learn. But it's not for everyone. Maybe,
Mhm.
it's just a personality thing or what you want to spend your time on. So I don't fault anyone if they're like, courses sound like a lot of work. This sounds bad, but there's definitely another way to do it. So number one, you wouldn't be in the hole financially. And number two, maybe you would have realized that you just don't like the business model and you're like, I'm not going to do it. Because if you consider the teachable payments too, that's another $1,200 probably, right?
Mhm.
So
Yep.
now we're at $4,000 to $5,000, and it's like, any thoughts on that? We've gone through it a million times, but we just
Yeah.
work differently too.
No, I think that's true. I think the broader question that I'm now having with my audience is like, do they buy anything? Right? Anything. Because we can send out emails about things in the knowledge directory. We can send out emails about, guides, whatever. And there's not some huge response to that. So I'm kind of like, well, yeah, I have a good size list. Like we'll probably be at 5,000 subscribers next month, which I think is pretty good for a site my size. Like it seems pretty good.
Yeah.
But I don't know that these people are converting people for anything, really. So that's a little bit why I'm also like, I don't know if this is going to be worth it, because I could send out as many emails as I want to this magical list that should be the most engaged people I have, and they're still not going to buy stuff. So,
right.
yeah.
And it's interesting because we'll talk about beer again.
Mhm.
So I'm in the home brewing community, and a lot of us are sort of budget minded, do it yourselfers, and we'd rather run to Home Depot and put together a Frankenstein system
Mhm.
of whatever versus paying a premium for something that's already built. Now, as I've gone through my brewing career, and some of the companies have become more sophisticated with the products that they have, and frankly, I have more disposable income now, so I'm more likely to just buy something that's a good
Right.
product to just save time. So that said, brewing beer is often like a kind of a luxury. It can be economic, but it is a luxury sort of hobby where sometimes people can be price insensitive if they if they go off the deep end,
Right.
like me. I think your niche might be the same way, where it's like maybe there's some do-it-yourself kind of ideas and they want to be frugal, but it's also like potentially a pretty expensive hobby to have. Is that
Yes.
accurate? Do you see some people
Yep.
spend a lot?
Oh, yeah.
So what I'm getting at is it could be the email list has been built on the content that maybe attracted the people that weren't spending as much.
Correct.
Is there any correlate? Like,
I
is there
think
anything
so.
that you could draw from that?
Yeah, our main lead magnet for joining the list is about saving money.
Okay. So there
So I
you
think
go.
that could be correlated for sure. What I don't know is like things like guides are $8,
Right.
right? So, right, it's been on different topics, different things. My gut says that on the course side, people want video courses, period. Especially, I would say in my niche, it's pretty visual, and so people want a bunch of video. Well, that's never going to happen. Like, I'm not doing it. I'm not an expert on the things. Like, I would have to get an expert on every topic who also does video. Like, I'm going to be in way more than $5,000 to get somebody to make a whole nice video for an expert to stand there and talk. So, without seeing any like major traction on it, I just don't know that I would do that. I would still potentially think about like maybe some really small specific video courses. You know, if there was a topic like that where it's like, well, you do some like mini courses.
Right.
But yeah, like I just think what people are willing to pay for is video, which is fine, but that's not logistically something I can do.
Got it. Okay. So anything else on the course topic or anything like that?
I don't think so. I feel good about having at least enough content on the site that's related that I can promote it through. So I did, I think, a good job of picking topics where I have a lot of supporting content that can lead people to that. So that's good. And then the only other thing I was going to say is we have our first like free email course went live at the very end of May that relates at the very end, funnels people to the first course. And then we have a second free e-course coming in June, and that will funnel people to the second one. So trying to just keep that related to each topic and try to get people there in a different way.
Cool. That's great. I think having the specific funnel that is created specifically for that course strategically, it totally makes sense. For both of those mini courses, do you think there's an opportunity to have them shared by influencers, other sources of traffic aside from Google, so that you can, you know, I know you have a lot of relationships, so that could be a great way where it's just like get people on the email list. It's a free mini course. It does help you out. You could even, I'll leave it at that. But yeah, would people share that around? Is it that kind of value?
Potentially, I would see it as being a little lighter on value than I would have liked. I did not write it myself. So I would probably want to make it twice as good before I would ask any like brand that I had a relationship with to share it. So it's just weighing like, do I put that much more effort into it or not? I don't know.
Gotcha. And how long is the mini course?
It's like six email drip, I think.
Okay. Gotcha. All right. And is that already rolled out? People can sign up and engage
So I put calls to action, like the little MailerLite embedded form thing, in 12 to 15 relevant posts for that first one. And then the second one I'm hoping to put out in June. But it was like the last 3 days of May. So
do you have a mechanism to allow your existing email subscribers to go through it? Did you point it out and say, hey, if you can go over here if you want to check it out, and just have them opt into it?
I don't think we have sent an email to everyone, but that's a good idea.
And the idea, of course, is it's the proper funnel to sell the course. And if they're engaged and they got the value, then it does take them through a little journey where maybe they can learn something, and maybe the course is a good fit for them, but they needed to see it a couple times, a couple launches maybe, and then go through a course.
So the other thing on the email front is that I need to replace the gal who's been doing all of my email. So she had a baby and has another job and all the things. So I'm going to have to train someone else on a system that I didn't set up. So that's going to be happening. So there may not be as many emails in June because we'll be doing that.
And when you say a system that you didn't set up, so it's like through
like MailerLite.
Okay. So you just don't
like
know
standard
the tool.
stuff. I've just not used it.
Got it. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that could be slightly more difficult, but at the same time, I mean, most of those apps are so straightforward. Like there's a couple
and
little things.
They have a course that I've sent the new gal, and I was like, start here.
Perfect.
So.
All right. Let's move on to content. So the initial target was to publish 400 articles by the end of, I think, June. And you throttled back quite a bit. So how much did you publish in the last month, and where are we in the grand total?
So this was our highest month for publishing. So we put out 55 new articles in May, and that makes it a total of 130 new for the year. So yeah, pretty decent. I mean, when I compare it to anything that we've done in the past, past, like the most articles I had on the site the first full year was like 85. So it is significant. The site is now over 615 posts, I think.
Wow.
Total.
All right. So, and you had, 130 total, and you had roughly 400 before. Is that okay? So you've added like 5% ish, something like that. Okay. Pretty cool. And then do you have a handle on whether or not those posts are pulling in traffic yet?
So I have my developer working on 2 custom reports for me, one of which will track all the new content that we've posted for the year, and the other one will track all of the improved content posts. So I'll have both of those in June.
Okay. And I actually just created a video. It's an 8-minute video. This should be a really fast thing for someone to do. So
yeah, I had him do something else 15
minutes. Okay. If he charges you very much, you should ask questions. Send him my video.
Okay.
Because if he's doing anything else, then he's ripping you off.
Okay.
All right. And
everyone will be happy to know, the masses, that we finally have SERP Robot set up. Okay. So yes, I am now tracking keywords, everyone. Calm down.
Perfect. So you will have some idea of rankings. And I think it goes to show, like, some people get caught up in the analytics so much. And I think you actually heeded my warnings, and you didn't look at metrics and analytics very often, and you just check in a couple of times a month. But you actually
now it would be helpful.
Yeah. It's good to know, especially if traffic's going down or something is changing. It's like, oh, that keyword dropped in rankings, and you can get some data from the Search Console, but it's not quite as good. And anyway, SERP Robot, you'll be in good shape here.
Yep.
All right. What's the target for June as far as number of articles?
So I think we'll be around the same place. We should be at least in the 40 range. I think my content manager is taking about a week off, which honestly was a relief, and gave me a little break from publishing. But yeah, we should be around 40 to 50 articles, I would say, per month for as long as it takes to get through my list. So I think we'll probably still be at 400 pieces for the year, just not by June. Okay.
Yeah. And I was going to say, I mean, if you keep going at the clip that you're at, it's not going to take very long. It'll just be a few more months here, before the end of the year.
And it would have been that I would have done like a holiday sprint later. And now I'm just lumping it into like the broader group of 400, so that would have been in Q3 anyway. Mm-hmm. So we're really just running through another quarter.
Okay. And no big deal. And I think we talked before that you would maybe keep them publishing through just an ongoing basis. Just
why less. Not? Mm-hmm. Okay. 10 articles a month or something,
All right.
Yeah.
Onto existing content. You've added FAQs. There's more images, stuff like that. How's that going?
Yep. So the goal for the year was to improve 100 articles. You helped me prioritize which ones to start with. So I started with that list, and I've now put in FAQs, 2 new FAQs per article for the first 50. And I should have the second 50 done in June. And then I'm going to go back and do the images and like the intro tightening and things like that. So the FAQs were just so easy to drop in. I was like, I'm just going to run through the list. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so progress there halfway through on adding FAQs.
So one thing you might consider, nothing urgent, but as your team is, finishing up with publishing new content, writing the new content, it might be good to instead of having them write new content on an ongoing basis, assign a couple of them. And I think we talked about it before, to just go back and improve the old content. You will have a lot. And basically at this point, you have you'll have so much content that a couple people can just constantly go through and, touch and update and make sure. And the thing is, there's been, more and more people talking about you should spend 50% of your time updating old content and 50% on like the new content. So just something to think about.
And I'd see that maybe being the way that next year's focus goes is, I mean, not to be corny, but more juice for the squeeze on what I already have. 600 articles is a lot. And if it turns out that 300 of them are doing me no good, then I would rather, I'm not starting from scratch on those. Those are things I could improve and potentially rank. So that does seem like a good place to spend time and potentially money.
Mm-hmm. Very good. And one other thing to bring up, and I was chatting with actually a couple of people have mentioned this to me not too long ago, where the content side, especially publishing new content or not publishing any content for a while, it may take like 6 to 12 months. And I guess it goes for on-page and off-site SEO.
Mm-hmm.
But if you don't publish too many new things, like last year, we focused a lot on other areas. Plus you had the infrastructure issues, the analytics, and some development things you had to take care of. So really, there wasn't too many like new posts published. There weren't very many. I think you did the holiday sprint, but it was not much compared to the previous year. So we don't see a huge amount of growth. It looks like maybe, there was a 1 to 2% growth from last month, but you're publishing a ton of content and it may just be a few months behind. So I wouldn't be surprised if, hopefully we see a nice bump going into the fall, hopefully sooner, but I think the fall is reasonable.
Yeah.
And then it just keeps going. And then, of course, like we mentioned, if you're constantly improving the old stuff, you're publishing a few new things, there's always that, good positive momentum. So
I'm curious what you think about, like my assumption, which is apparently wrong, would be that, doubled site revenue last year was kind of the goal, which happened. And I had kind of assumed like, if I did nothing this year, it would at least stay the same, right? Which has not been the case. So I'm caught a little bit in this place of like, well, how much do I have to do every year to keep the bucket from leaking versus actually growing it, right? So part of why I think this year has been a little frustrating is just like, I feel like I'm doing all this work just to try to get the site back to where it was this time last year, right? Without having really, nothing happened. But, I'm just like, do I have to do this every year for the rest of my life to keep the site where it is? Or is there at some point that like a site that's earning well consistently does that without you? Like it's not feeling very passive at the moment because I'm doing a massive sprint, right? Which is a choice. But I also find myself wondering like, is it going to be passive? Or if I don't do things with it all the time, is it going to be a leaky bucket forever? Like, what have you seen?
So a couple things. First, I think like any kind of quote passive income source, there's always some maintenance. And I know you're not saying, hey, I just want to like leave for 2 years and not do anything. So I think once you have it dialed in, especially with like, I'm just going to make up the team. Let's say you have 2 people that do 10 hours per week and they go and improve old content. So you got 20 hours per week going on. And then you have maybe 2 writers that write 2 articles each. So you're publishing a decent amount on an ongoing basis. Things are being improved. You have a ton of keywords, blah, blah, blah. So once you have those people dialed in, I think it's okay. The other side of the coin, right? I had a friend that I interviewed not too long ago. I think the interview is going to come out pretty soon. And he was one of the ones that mentioned his site sort of, it was a little stagnant. They were cruising. And then the next year, the lack of effort from the previous year kicked in and it was just, momentum taking them down. Meanwhile, it was a much more competitive niche. There were new competitors coming up with big budgets and a lot of motivation. And he was kind of at the end of his motivation. He really didn't care about the site anymore. So the point being, he realized that, they should have done a little bit more maintenance. They kind of
Mm-hmm.
got complacent. So I think as long as you're doing some maintenance, you could be
Yep.
okay. Now, the other side of it is potentially, right? If you are able to get traffic from other sources, if you're able to have like a diverse revenue stream, then it can be more passive. The Google updates won't impact you very much. And a lot of that is based on like just other traffic sources. So I could tell you on Niche Site Project, we've talked about it for years. I haven't published new things. You've written more in the last 2 years because
Right.
you're doing case studies. And I'm doing video and podcast, and those represent other traffic sources. Podcast is totally independent. I mean, that is an open RSS feed. Like I could do whatever I want. YouTube is great. It's someone else's, property that I'm building on. So there's risk there, but it represents a new traffic source for me. So for the Niche Site Project, I'm in good shape, even though I haven't been doing very good SEO and my traffic has dwindled. And that's the thing. You have to keep doing stuff to stay ahead of the Google updates, I think. So it's really, it's how you architect and the traffic sources, I think. So if you could figure out like I mentioned before, what if you had like the social media influencers kind of send, like maybe on an ongoing basis, send traffic to that funnel, and then you grow the email list, and 5,000 is a pretty decent size, period.
Yeah.
But for a small niche, it's like your open rates are crazy too, like 30-40%, right?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. So
They're
overall,
reading. They're just not buying.
yeah. But
Good readers.
It's good engagement, but like you may be able to use that as like a mechanism to create goodwill from the influencers. So like you send them some people, they send you some people, and like it helps everyone out. But to answer your question, there's always some maintenance, number one. Number two, these sort of pure content sites where they're based on all Google traffic, it is a little more problematic. You do have to do a little bit more. Sometimes you'll end up doing a ton of work and it feels like it's not really doing much until much later, and you're not the correlation and cause and effect. It doesn't, line up. The other part I'll bring up too is you're doing some freelance writing, which is actually paying pretty well. And you have the course that you're working on too. So it feels really busy. Can you talk just a little bit about the freelance writing you're doing?
Yeah. So I developed a relationship with a big brand in my niche through the site who had just like seen us posting. I think it was about our inclusivity project, actually, on Instagram or something. I don't even know how they found us, something social. And they'd reached out to say, hey, we want to do like, just like standard product review stuff. And I was like, interesting. So I got a call with them and was just kind of asking them about their team. And I was like, tell me how many like writers and designers you have, like what's the makeup? And they were like, we don't have a writer. And I was shocked because that seems insane. So that ended up snowballing into a friendship and a monthly retainer. And so now I write all of their emails and have been working on a catalog for the last week and a half. So it's turned into, a monthly engagement. And if I count that in site revenue, which I kind of feel like I should, since it came from the site, that's $4K a month ish, a lot of work, but it's also with like a really good brand. And I feel like I could build on that. So that is definitely something that has diversified my income away from like my main job, like my marketing company. So I do feel good that I have like a couple of different buckets running, and it's not something, again, where like I'm very lucky to be able to put money into the site. That's great. I think the feeling that I don't like is like never being caught up on the plan that I've made up from nothing. Right. So like I make these goals and I'm like, like this course is never going to be out there, or, I'm behind on the content. And it's like, that's a fake goal anyway. Like, calm down.
Yeah.
So a little bit of that is just like who I am that I need to potentially tweak. But yeah, like when I think about next year, I think like, since I have people that I really like now and I have a content manager that causes me like zero heartache ever, like, can I just make a consistent process and be like, here's the monthly plan, get it done. I don't want to talk about it. I don't even want to see it. Mm-hmm. I just want to pay you. I just want to know that things are happening. And I think that could be the way that 2023 is. Like, here's the content improvement plan every month. Now you just execute it the same way every month.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And I think that's how it would be, fairly passive. You have an operations person and you just, I would maybe still check in like every week at first, like make sure it's going on, and then slowly taper it down to like every 2 weeks.
She sends me weekly updates. It's nice.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like whatever cadence you want. But I would say, on this update here, can you go back and update it to add the 4K in there and, just note it maybe in like the earnings section, just say like plus 4K. And that started at the beginning of the year. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And I'll leave it up to you, but if you were able to go back to the previous several updates, like each of the monthly updates, note that in there. You could even just put an asterisk, but change like this month, this year, and the lifetime, where you just increment it so it reflects that additional money. Because then, of course, instead of 5,700, you're sitting at just under 10K, 9,700, and that looks great for our headlines. So
well, that's all I think about. That's what I want for you. That is what I want for you.
Yeah. Yeah. So, because you're right, it is part of, I mean, it's tied directly to the site. So it's not even like you're doing some extra freelance work in something unrelated. No, it's how they found me. It is from this effort. So.
And that's what makes me think that there could be potential for, things like a media kit, which I drafted this month, to just do some things like that might be more brand focused than SEO, right? That would just be a little bit more income diversity as well. So we'll see.
All right. Well, I think that covers most everything. Any other thoughts here?
I don't think so. I mean, I'm hopeful that as we kind of go through summer and into Q3, it picks up a little bit. I'm happy the traffic isn't going down anymore. Like the first couple of months of the year made me a little weepy inside. But yeah, I think it's, it's just the broader relying on other people's systems. Like you said, with YouTube, like half my site income currently resides on Amazon. And if Amazon is seeing less sales, then so am I. There's not a whole lot I can do about that. So, yeah, I think the site itself is pretty healthy. I'm happy with the amount of content we got published last month. And yeah, I think the team I have is, going to be good going way past this year. So that's positive.
And remind me again, how many people do you have on the team right now?
I think we have about 5 writers that we kept and a content manager and then social email.
Okay. Perfect. Okay. Well, we'll link up so people can check out the blog post, get a little bit more background. And yeah, I'm looking forward to catching up next month. Are you taking any time off for the summer, or are you just plugging away and get the team rolling?
It's kind of plugging away. Yeah. Plugging away. But I'm glad you're back to brewing.
Yeah. The beer should be ready in a couple weeks here, and I'll build up the reserve. So, and I think farther ahead too, because I was like, okay, I got a couple summer beers that are brewing, but the winter beers are just around the corner. So I'm like, they need to age a little bit.
Beer, like if you make it today, how long are you able to drink it?
Well, a very long time.
Okay.
So I have years. So I
Okay.
actually have some bottles that are 10-ish years old or so that I've made myself. Actually, there's a couple that are like maybe close to 15 when I very first started brewing. And those are bottles. So those are a little bit more finicky. Some of them may not have aged as well because I was just a young brewer. But in the kegs, and I have kegs behind me over here. So in kegs, it's in stainless steel, and then there's CO2 that you pressurize it with, and that's the carbonation, of course. And then it won't oxidize. So literally in the kegerator, I have a beer that I think it's about 5 or 6 years old. And I was like, I need to finish that because I got all this new beer coming through.
Yeah.
And then there's a keg back there that I aged in a whiskey barrel from actually a local Bozeman distillery.
That's cool.
And it's 4 years old. I think I made it like just before I left.
So if you brew ahead, it's fine. You're not going to brew more than you can drink in the amount of time that it's good.
Yep, exactly right. And those higher alcohol beers, they take a little longer to make, and it's good to age them a little bit. So there's a chance, I brew a couple, high alcohol, 10, 12% beers, and it's for next year. It's like for winter of 2023. I'll get some for this season. And a lot of times what I'll do is do a 10-gallon batch and then have like 5 gallons for this season and then save like 5 gallons for next year. Something like that.
Well, if you haven't brewed in a while, it's good to get ahead again.
Yeah. Yeah. It's pretty fun. Pretty fun. Okay. I could talk all day about that, but we'll catch up with you in a few weeks.
Cool. Thanks, Doug.